all these people had talent, needed a new hobby, and by God, this was it. I was born in 1921, but my dad moved to Los Angeles in 1921 or 22. When we were 12 years old, that'd be 1933, we'd see in our neighborhood a little stripped down Model T or a Buick. I said, boy, what could be more fun than that, to ride around a little homemade racing car like that? Well, I found out they call them gow jobs. It might have came from get up and go like 60 was a famous phrase in those days. Well, we found out there are a lot of these cars in different parts of town, and if you want to see a lot of them, go up to Muroc Dry Lake several times a year, 100 miles from Los Angeles, out in the desert there. There'd be this dry lake bed, which floods in the winter and smooths out and makes a good racing surface, almost 20 miles long. And they'd have these meets up there. And we also found out that in our neighborhood, lucky there were two members of the Bungholders Club, which belonged to SCTA, that was organized with the Throttlers Club and the Cam Breakers and this and that. There was many different clubs. And they would have these meets up at the dry lakes for top speed only, you know. I didn't have the money to join, and I just hung out with them. But you could buy a Model T in those days for $10 and take it home and take it apart or get it running, you know. So we learned as we went along, and the older fellas would give us advice and tell us how to do things, and we learned from them. There was hop-up equipment for the Model T, which was made back east, usually in Indiana or Ohio. And we could buy those cylinder heads at pretty cheap in those days. After building several little junky cars, I built a little better car, and now I had bought a set of cylinder heads that fit this 32 Ford V8 engine, which I was going to put in my Model T, and I'm going to have a special cam because it's half overhead and half flathead. And I knew it would be a different cam for the intake valves than it did for the exhaust. It didn't take long to find out that we have a mentor, Edward A. Winfield, who was a race driver, and he became an expert at grinding cams and the building speed equipment. So I went to Winfield, and luckily I had the money, about $20 to buy a cam now, because I was working in the machine shop and we were building airplane parts for England. England was already in the war. I met Mr. Winfield, and he took me into the shop and showed me the cam grinder he had built. And with my little experience as apprentice machinist, I said, gee, I could build that little cam grinding attachment too. So pretty soon we heard about fellows joining the Army Air Corps and learning how to fly, and that seemed very exciting, and everybody was like to be a fighter pilot. So now all these fellas that used to race at the dry lakes and try out their cars, they usually worked with government equipment and learned a lot more about engines during the war. And when they came back out of the service, they were anxious to go back to the dry lake racing up there several times a year. Gosh, it was a greater new economy, yeah. That's what helped a lot. And that's when I got interested. The cam grinding was considered a very technical and I didn't know they had this phrase, but uncharted territory. This is something new, so I decided to build a cam grinder. You had to build your own cam grinder if you wanted to make racing cams. A place for a master cam and a roller to run against, and this will with the right master cam, you'll get a certain profile on your cams. I can now make cams, make a master, and make many profiles like that on a cam. In those days, it was a matter of taking the stock cam grinding the lobes to a new profile within the stock cam and getting more lift and longer duration, better breathing. Well, by golly, a hot rod magazine had started. When I found out about it, I put an ad in there for $10 a month. Believe it or not, that got back east to NASCAR, who was running flathead Fords on racetracks back there. So they called up and wanted 2 cams by airmail at $20 a piece. And I was afraid they were going to ask me how much experience I had, because I only had 6 months experience or so. But they were open-minded. They were buying those cams, and they ordered again and again. And I found out later that the reason they were buying them, because of my fast action and short timing, but a good area under the lift curve because of the fast action. And since they only had the rev about 5,500 RPM, the engine had good mid-range power, and you could pass cars on the track and work your way to the front. And you couldn't do that if they bought a super cab, because that was so long in duration, it only had top-end power. So mine had kind of a flexible power. My ambition was to make $100 a day, which would be 5 cams at $20 a piece. Labor, you know. And by golly, in about a year, we were doing 5 cams a day. And that was a good living. So then it got bigger than expected after that. I couldn't believe it. All these people had talent, needed a new hobby, and by God, this was it. Either hot rods or drag racing cars. It was booming, and I was lucky I grew along with it. I was always afraid some engineer would make fun of me or tell me what I'm talking about is not true. But no, I realized later there weren't any experts about this new hobby. It was open for everybody to throw in their 2 cents worth, you might say. And then pretty soon I started to boast in my ads, and pretty soon we had a kind of little rivalry, and sometimes we'd poke fun at the other guys. So pretty soon they called it the Cam Wars between cam grinders. So 1949, I think it was, but I'm not sure. John Cobb has gone 400 and some miles an hour up there on the Bonneville Salt Flats. Wally Parks, they decide, why don't we go up there big time and race on that salt up there? Well, 2 guys, Norm Lean and Doug Harrison, decide to go with their Model A Roadster with a V8 engine. And they're using my cam, and he says, we're going to dress up the crew a little bit, too. What are you going to do? Well, I don't know, we'll think of something. So they come back with my t-shirt, my little emblem right there, Isky Cams. I said, where'd you get this made? Oh, we had them made in Hollywood. He gave me the address, and I went up there and said, hey, I want to make more of these. I'll make it big, though. And we sold half of them, and we gave away half of them. And then the next meet at Bonneville, the next year, we gave away 4 for each entry. So the T-shirts became a great advertising deal. They think I invented the T-shirt advertising idea. Someone might have done it before me, but they seem to think I might have. But I got the guys that gave me the idea. I mean, they thought of it. In later years, this was a funny thing that happened. We're ragging in our ad and everything, and then Pete Millar, who was a great help to me because he'd make cartoons for me. Oh yeah, here's one of those ads. See, Pete Millar would make up ads, would give me ideas for ads like this. See? Yeah, that was And he comes one day, he says, I want to make a new cartoon on you, and it's going to be that new movie that came out. I says, Godfather. Why don't you make it Camfather? We grabbed the term and it stuck. No one else was using it. I had some fun with my sons. I said, you quit putting those ads in, calling myself the Camfather, and now that new company that started up claims that they are the Camfather. What? What? They did? I said, no, they didn't. But they will if we don't keep it up. So I scared them that way. Been very fortunate. to get in something that I like and was interested in and still interested in it. A lot of the development came from just trying things, just mechanical things I'd like to curious about. I wonder if this will work. Wonder if we ought to try that. I always figured we might stumble onto something. If we just keep fooling around here, and we did. That's what we did. We stumbled onto something.